At Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport, a simple act of prejudice ignited an unexpected revolution. When gate supervisor Patricia Holloway targeted Dr. Maya Richardson, accusing her of fraud and theft in front of hundreds of passengers, she couldn't have known that a 4-year-old boy watching from nearby had a story that would change everything. One small voice crying out, "That's my doctor! She fixed my heart!" set in motion a chain of events that would expose a nationwide pattern of discrimination, topple careers, and transform an entire industry. The staff who tried to humiliate a renowned surgeon never realized they weren't just harassing a random traveler. They were awakening a woman who had saved more lives than they could count, including one very important little boy whose billionaire father had just witnessed everything. Just before we continue, I'd love to know where you're watching from today. And if these stories move you, if they make you feel something real, please take just 1 second to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Tomorrow's story is one that will stay with you for days, and I don't want you to miss it. The morning sun streamed through the vast glass walls of Terminal B, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Thousands of travelers moved in choreographed chaos, businessmen with rolling briefcases, families corralling children, couples holding hands as they rushed toward distant gates. Among them walked Dr. Maya Richardson, her pace urgent but controlled. At 38, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had faced death countless times and won more often than not. Her natural, voluminous curly hair, dark brown to black, framed an oval face with smooth, medium dark brown skin. Her almond-shaped dark brown eyes scanned the departure screens with practiced efficiency. She wore a light beige blazer over a white inner top, minimal accessories, professional but understated. Her carry-on rolled behind her with the efficient rhythm of someone who traveled constantly for work. Inside that bag, alongside her laptop and change of clothes, were detailed surgical notes for a procedure that would begin in exactly 14 hours. A child's life hung in the balance. Maya checked her phone again. 3 missed calls from Dr. Hernandez at Seattle Children's Hospital. A text message, "Patient stable, but declining. How soon can you arrive?" She typed back quickly, "Risk boarding in 20 minutes. We'll scrub in immediately upon landing." The response came instantly. "The family is asking for you specifically. They've read about your work. You're their only hope." Maya's chest tightened. She had performed this particular surgery, a complex arterial switch operation on a newborn with transposition of the great arteries, perhaps 50 times in her career. Her success rate was among the highest in the world. But each case still carried weight, still demanded everything she had. She couldn't afford to miss this flight. Gate 47 appeared ahead, and Maya quickened her steps. A line had already formed at the boarding door, first-class passengers receiving priority treatment. She pulled out her boarding pass and identification, ready to join them. That's when she noticed the gate supervisor watching her. Patricia Holloway stood behind the podium with the rigid posture of someone who believed uniforms conferred moral authority. At 52, she had worked for Prestige Airways for 19 years, rising to a position that gave her power over who boarded and who didn't. Her thin lips pressed together as her eyes tracked Maya's approach. Something in that gaze made Maya's instincts prickle. She had seen that look before, the measuring, the calculating, the prejudgment that happened before a single word was exchanged. "Stay calm," Maya told herself. "Board the plane. Save the child. Nothing else matters." She joined the first-class line, boarding pass extended. "Excuse me," Patricia's voice cut across the murmur of the crowd. "Ma'am, you, with the carry-on." Maya looked up. "Yes?" "That line is for first-class passengers only." "I'm aware." Maya held up her boarding pass. "I have a first-class ticket." Patricia's eyes narrowed almost imperceptibly. "I'll need to verify that. Please step aside." A flicker of irritation crossed Maya's face, but she controlled it. "Of course." She moved to the podium, watching as Patricia made a show of examining her boarding pass with exaggerated scrutiny. Behind her, other first-class passengers, all of them white. Maya couldn't help but notice continued boarding without question. "This ticket was purchased with a corporate account," Patricia announced, loud enough for nearby passengers to hear. "Yes, my hospital's surgical travel fund." "And you work for this hospital?" Maya's jaw tightened. "I'm a pediatric cardiac surgeon. I've been with Seattle Children's for 11 years. Patricia's expression didn't change. "I see. And do you have identification from this hospital?" I have my medical license, my driver's license, my passport, all of which match the name on that boarding pass. Hospital identification, Patricia repeated, as if Maya hadn't spoken. I don't typically carry my badge when traveling. It's not required. Patricia set down the boarding pass and folded her arms. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step over here while we verify this ticket's authenticity. The words landed like a slap. Around them, passengers began to stare. Conversations paused. The weight of dozens of eyes pressed against Maya's back. Verify its authenticity? Maya repeated, her voice carefully level. I purchased this ticket 3 days ago. Your own system confirmed the purchase. I received the boarding pass through your airline's app. Corporate fraud is a serious issue, Patricia continued, her voice carrying with performative authority. We have protocols. Fraud? The word escaped before Maya could stop it. You're accusing me of fraud? I'm following procedure. Really? Maya gestured toward the boarding door, where an elderly white man in a rumpled suit was walking through without so much as a glance at his boarding pass. Does your procedure apply to everyone, or just certain passengers? Patricia's face flushed slightly. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to lower your voice. I haven't raised my voice. If you continue to be combative, I'm asking a question, a reasonable question about why I'm being singled out. Patricia reached for her radio. Security to gate 47, please. We have a situation. The word times, situation times, hit Maya like ice water. She knew what came next, the escalation, the uniforms, the assumption of guilt that would follow her through the airport's bureaucratic maze while a child in Seattle waited for surgery. This is absurd, Maya said, her voice tight. I need to board this flight. I have a patient. Ma'am, please step aside and wait for security. A child is going to die if I don't get to Seattle. The outburst silenced the gate area. Every face turned toward her, now some curious, some uncomfortable, some already forming judgments about the angry black woman causing a scene. Patricia's expression shifted to something almost satisfied. This is exactly the kind of behavior that concerns me. What behavior? Advocating for my patient? Volatility, aggression, resistance to lawful requests. Maya felt the trap closing around her. Every word she spoke dug her deeper. Silence made her look guilty. Protest made her look aggressive. There was no winning move, only degrees of losing. 2 security officers appeared at the edge of her vision, approaching with the deliberate pace of people who expected trouble. She could see them assessing her another judgment, another calculation, another moment where her humanity was reduced to a threat level. Asterisk, this is how it happens. Asterisk, she thought, the bitter familiarity of it washing over her. Asterisk, this is how they make you disappear. Asterisk. Dr. Richardson? The voice was small, high-pitched, and utterly unexpected. Maya turned. A little boy stood behind the security barrier, clutching a stuffed elephant to his chest. He couldn't have been more than 4 years old, round face with soft features, large dark brown eyes, dark brown curly hair framing his face in loose curls. He wore a navy suit jacket over a light-colored shirt, as if dressed for a formal occasion. He was staring at Maya with an expression of pure wonder. Dr. Richardson, he said again, louder now, his face breaking into a brilliant smile. Daddy? Look, it's Dr. Richardson, the doctor who fixed my heart. The security officers stopped in their tracks. Patricia's mouth opened, but no words came out. The entire gate area seemed frozen in a moment of collective confusion. Maya stared at the child, her mind racing through thousands of young patients she had treated over the years. The face was familiar, those eyes, that curly hair, but she couldn't quite place him. Jun? A deep voice cut through the silence. Jun, come back here. A man emerged from the first-class lounge, his stride long and purposeful. He was tall, with a light to medium skin tone, a strong jawline, and angular facial structure. His narrow, intense, dark brown eyes swept the scene with immediate comprehension. Black hair, short on the sides and longer on top, was neatly styled and slicked back. He wore an impeccably tailored black suit with a white dress shirt, no tie, the kind of understated elegance that whispered rather than shouted wealth. But his expression was anything but elegant. It was the face of a father who had just watched his son run toward an apparent confrontation. June, what did I tell you about wandering off? The little boy grabbed his father's hand and tugged urgently. Daddy, look, it's her! The doctor who saved me! The man's gaze shifted to Maya, and something flickered across his features: recognition, followed by confusion, followed by a dangerous understanding as he took in the scene. The security officers. Patricia's defensive posture. Maya, standing isolated and accused. "Dr. Richardson," he said, and his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. "I remember you." Maya's memory clicked into place. 2 years ago. Stanford Children's Hospital, where she had served as visiting surgical fellow before her permanent position in Seattle. A desperately ill infant with complex congenital heart defects. A surgery that had lasted 14 hours. A father who had waited in the hallway, refusing to eat or sleep until his son was out of danger. "Mr. Park," she breathed. Jin-Soo Park, founder and CEO of Horizon Global Technologies, one of the largest electronics conglomerates in Asia. Forbes had valued his net worth at nearly $23 billion. He sat on the boards of 3 international charities, funded medical research at a dozen universities, and had personally called Maya's department head to express his gratitude after June's surgery. And now he was standing in Terminal B of Atlanta's airport, watching his son recognize the woman who had saved his life, while that same woman was being accused of fraud and surrounded by security. "What's happening here?" Jin-Soo's voice was quiet, but it carried the unmistakable edge of someone accustomed to answers. Patricia recovered first, her tone shifting to practiced professionalism. "Sir, this is a security matter. Please return to the lounge while we—" I asked what's happening. The interruption was soft, but absolute. Patricia's mouth snapped shut. Jin-Soo's eyes moved from Maya to the security officers to Patricia, reading the scene with the analytical precision that had built his empire. "Dr. Richardson is the surgeon who saved my son's life. She performed a 14-hour operation that only a handful of doctors in the world could have attempted. She is one of the most respected pediatric cardiac surgeons on the planet." He paused, his gaze settling on Patricia with uncomfortable intensity. "And you have her surrounded by security. Why?" Patricia's face had gone pale. "Sir, there were concerns about her ticket." "What concerns?" "The purchase was made through a corporate account." "My company makes all our flight purchases through corporate accounts," Jin-Soo said flatly. "I don't recall ever being questioned about fraud." A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Someone was recording on their phone. Maya could see the lens pointed in their direction. The situation was escalating beyond Patricia's control, and the gate supervisor's expression showed she knew it. This was standard procedure. Patricia tried again, but her voice had lost its authority. "Standard procedure." Jin-Soo let the words hang in the air. "I've flown through this airport perhaps 30 times. I have never once seen you question a first-class passenger's ticket. Never once seen you call security before someone even reached the podium." He took a step closer, and though he didn't raise his voice, his intensity seemed to fill the space. "What was different about Dr. Richardson?" Patricia said nothing. "She's black," little June said, his child's voice cutting through the adult tension with devastating clarity. "Is that why they're being mean to her?" The gate area went utterly silent. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming combination of exhaustion, fear, and the unexpected grace of being seen, of being defended, of a child's simple perception cutting through all the pretense and euphemism to name what everyone could see but no one would say. "June," his father said softly, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes. Sometimes they treat people unfairly because of how they look. It's not right, but it happens." "But she's a hero," June insisted, clutching his elephant tighter. "She saved my life. She saved lots of kids. Why would anyone be mean to a hero?" Jin-Soo looked at his son for a long moment, then turned back to Patricia. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor. Immediately." "Sir. And I want the names of every staff member involved in this incident." Patricia's hand trembled as she reached for the desk phone. I'll contact the shift manager." "Do that." Jin-Soo turned to Maya, his expression softening. "Dr. Richardson, I apologize that you've been subjected to this treatment. Please sit down. Let me get you some water." "I can't," Maya said, her voice still unsteady. "I have a patient, a child in Seattle. She needs surgery." "This flight?" Jin-Soo glanced at the departure board. "It's delayed now. Everyone is watching instead of boarding. But we will fix this." He pulled out his phone, already typing. What hospital? Seattle Children's. I know their chief administrator. I funded their new cardiac wing 3 years ago. He spoke without arrogance, simply stating facts. Let me make a call. The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Jinsu's call to Seattle Children's resulted in immediate assurance that the surgical team would be on standby whenever Maya arrived. A second call to Prestige Airways CEO Jinsu apparently had the man's personal number, produced an immediate apology and a guarantee of accommodation on the next available flight if this one was missed. The shift manager appeared, followed by the airport's customer service director, followed by someone from corporate who had apparently been dispatched the moment Jinsu's identity became known. I don't want personal accommodations, Jinsu told the growing cluster of airline executives. I want an explanation of your procedures and why they were applied discriminatorily. Mr. Park, I assure you, this was an isolated incident. Was it? Jinsu's voice remained calm, but something in his eyes made the executive fall silent. I wonder how many travelers have been questioned the way Dr. Richardson was questioned today. How many were too frightened to speak up? How many missed their flights, missed their jobs, missed moments that couldn't be recovered? The executive opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I'd like access to your complaint records. Jinsu continued. Every discrimination complaint filed against gate staff at this terminal for the past 5 years. Every incident report involving selective passenger screening. Sir, that's confidential information. Then I suppose my legal team will need to subpoena it. Jinsu's smile didn't reach his eyes. Unless you'd prefer to cooperate voluntarily and demonstrate that Prestige Airways takes these matters seriously. While the executives conferred in panicked whispers, June tugged on Maya's sleeve. She looked down at the little boy who had, through simple recognition, upended everything. I remember you, June said seriously. You told me I had a superhero heart. You said I was brave. Maya crouched to his level, blinking back tears. You were brave, June. You're still brave. The bravest patient I ever had. Are you okay? Those people were being mean. I'm okay now, Maya said, and realized it was true. Because you spoke up for me. Because you told everyone who I was when no one else would listen. June nodded solemnly. My daddy says, when you see something wrong, you have to say something. Even if you're scared, even if you're little. Your daddy is very wise. June leaned closer, his voice dropping to a stage whisper. He cried when I was sick. He thought I didn't see, but I did. He was really scared. Maya glanced up at Jinsu, who was still engaged in intense conversation with the airline executives. The composed billionaire, the man of absolute control, she tried to imagine him weeping in a hospital hallway, facing the possibility of losing his only son. He loves you very much, she told June. I know, June smiled, gap-toothed and genuine. He says you're part of our family now, because you saved me. He says we always take care of family. The boarding announcement finally came 30 minutes late, with personal apologies from the airline and assurances that the incident would be thoroughly investigated. Patricia Holloway had disappeared, whether reassigned or removed, Maya didn't know. Jinsu insisted on escorting Maya to the boarding door himself. June held her hand the entire way, chattering about his elephant named Mr. Trunk and his favorite cartoons and how he wanted to be a doctor when he grew up like Dr. Richardson. We're flying to Seoul, Jinsu explained as they walked. For my mother's birthday. But I would like to speak with you further about what happened today, if you're willing. What do you mean? Jinsu was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. I've spent my career building systems, manufacturing, technology. I understand how structures work, how they succeed, and how they fail. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. What I witnessed today wasn't a personal failure. It was a systemic one. The way that woman looked at you, questioned you, assumed your guilt, she'd done it before, many times. Maya nodded slowly. I've encountered it many times too. Then perhaps it's time someone did something about it, something beyond apologies and press releases. Jinsu handed her a business card, heavy paper, elegant font, nothing ostentatious. When you return from your surgery, call me. I have resources, I have reach, and I believe this situation requires both. Before Maya could respond, Jun threw his arms around her waist in a fierce hug. Thank you for fixing my heart, he said into her jacket, and thank you for being brave today. I'm going to tell everyone about you. Maya hugged him back, this small boy who had changed everything without understanding how. Thank you for speaking up, Jun. You have no idea what that meant. As she boarded the plane, Maya looked back one last time. Jinsu stood with his hand on his son's shoulder, watching her go. Jun waved enthusiastically, his stuffed elephant bouncing with each movement. In 11 hours, she would be in an operating room, focused entirely on saving another child's life. But something had shifted in the hours before, something that felt like the beginning of a larger story. She didn't know yet how right she was. The surgery in Seattle lasted 16 hours. Dr. Maya Richardson stood over the operating table, her movements precise and controlled, her mind locked in the complete focus that only comes when a life hangs in the balance. The patient, a 3-week-old girl named Emma whose heart had been formed wrong, the great arteries reversed, lay tiny and still beneath the bright lights. Maya's team worked in practice synchronization, each person anticipating the next movement before instructions were given. The arterial switch procedure was among the most complex in pediatric cardiology, requiring the delicate repositioning of blood vessels smaller than pencils while maintaining blood flow to a body weighing barely 8 pounds. Twice during the surgery, complications arose that threatened to end everything. Twice, Maya adapted, improvised, found solutions that would later be written up in medical journals as examples of surgical innovation under pressure. When it was finally over, when the monitors showed stable rhythms, and the tiny chest rose and fell with independent breath, Maya stepped back from the table and allowed herself to feel the exhaustion she had been holding at bay for 21 hours. Brilliant work, Dr. Hernandez murmured as they scrubbed out. I've never seen anyone handle that bleed the way you did. Maya nodded, too tired for words. She thought of Emma's parents, waiting in the family room for news. She thought of Jinsu Park, waiting in that hospital hallway 2 years ago. She thought of all the parents who placed their children's lives in her hands and trusted her to give them back. When she finally emerged to speak with Emma's family, to see the hope reignite in their eyes as she delivered good news, Maya felt the same profound gratitude she always felt in these moments. The privilege of being allowed to do this work. The weight of lives saved and lives lost. But underneath the familiar emotions, something else stirred. The memory of the airport, of Patricia Holloway's accusatory gaze, of Jun's small voice cutting through the silence. Asterisk. That's my doctor. She fixed my heart. Asterisk. How many other black professionals, Maya wondered, faced similar moments every day? How many were questioned, doubted, humiliated, in spaces where their credentials should have spoken for themselves? How many didn't have a billionaire's son nearby to vouch for them? She had been lucky. The thought lodged in her mind like a splinter, uncomfortable and insistent. Luck shouldn't be necessary to be treated with basic dignity. 3 days later, recovered from the worst of her jet lag, Maya sat in her apartment scrolling through emails. The message from Jinsu Park's office was near the top, a formal invitation to a video conference at her earliest convenience. She scheduled it for the following afternoon. Jinsu appeared on her laptop screen looking exactly as he had at the airport, composed, focused, his intensity somehow magnified even through digital transmission. Jun was visible in the background, playing with building blocks on an ornate Korean rug. Dr. Richardson, thank you for making time. Please call me Maya. After everything, I think we've moved past formality. A slight softening around Jinsu's eyes. Maya, then. And I'm Jinsu. How is your patient? The baby in Seattle? Emma. She's recovering well. Should be able to go home in a few weeks. Good. That's very good. Jinsu leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious. I've spent the past 3 days researching the airline industry's treatment of black passengers. What I've discovered is troubling. I could have told you that without research. Yes, but now I have data, and data is something I know how to use. He shared his screen, revealing a presentation filled with statistics, case studies, and legal analyses. Complaint patterns showing black passengers were questioned about ticket validity at rates 5 to 8 times higher than white passengers. Incident reports revealing systematic escalation tactics. Internal communications, how he had obtained these, Maya couldn't imagine showing explicit instructions to gate staff about risk profiling. This isn't isolated, Jinsu said. This is policy. Unwritten, unspoken, but policy nonetheless. And it extends far beyond Prestige Airways. Maya studied the data, her stomach tightening. She had known, of course, in the way Black Americans always knew, the accumulated weight of a lifetime of small indignities and large ones. But seeing it quantified, systematized, documented in cold corporate language, transformed personal experience into undeniable evidence. "What are you proposing?" she asked quietly. "A partnership. My resources. Your story. Your credibility." Jinsu's voice was measured but passionate. "You are one of the most respected surgeons in the country. When you speak, people listen. When you describe what happened at that gate, it's not dismissed as exaggeration or paranoia. It's believed. You want me to go public? I want to give you the platform to go public if you choose. Legal support, media strategy, protection against retaliation." Jinsu paused. "But only if you want this. I won't pressure you. I understand the personal cost of becoming a symbol." Maya was quiet for a long moment. She thought of her carefully built career, her reputation, the surgical teams who depended on her. She thought of the inevitable backlash, the accusations of playing the race card, the scrutiny that would follow. She thought of all the travelers who didn't have a choice. "I want to tell you something," she said finally. "Something I've never told anyone." Jinsu waited, his attention complete. "When I was 12 years old, my mother took me shopping for a dress. It was for my aunt's wedding. I was going to be a junior bridesmaid. We went to a nice department store, the kind my mother had to save for months to afford." Maya's voice was steady, but her hands had curled into fists beneath the camera's view. "A security guard followed us through every section. When my mother went to pay, the cashier called a manager, who examined every bill like we'd printed them ourselves. When we finally left, having purchased exactly one dress with money my mother had earned, honestly, the security guard stopped us at the door and demanded to search our bags." Jinsu's expression had darkened with each word. "My mother was a nurse," Maya continued. "She worked double shifts. She saved lives. And they treated her like a criminal in front of her child. In front of everyone." She paused, swallowing. "She never went back to that store. She never filed a complaint. She just absorbed it, the way Black women learn to absorb these things. And I watched her carry that humiliation home with her." "I'm sorry," Jinsu said, and the words carried genuine weight. "She died 3 years ago. Heart attack. She never saw me become a surgeon." Maya's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I think about her every time someone looks at me the way Patricia Holloway did. Every time I'm questioned, doubted, made to prove I belong in spaces I've earned my place in. What would your mother want you to do?" The question cut straight to the heart of it. Maya closed her eyes for a moment, reaching for a memory of her mother's voice, her mother's strength, her mother's stubborn refusal to let the world's cruelty diminish her. "She would want me to fight," Maya said. "She would want me to make sure no other little girl has to watch her mother be humiliated." Jinsu nodded slowly. "Then let's fight together. If this story is touching something in you, if you're feeling the weight of Maya's choice, please take a moment to hit that like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. These stories spread because of you, because you care enough to pass them on. And every share, every comment, every new subscriber helps more people find these messages of hope and justice. So please, right now, become part of this community. We're building something meaningful together." The following weeks moved with the momentum of a carefully orchestrated campaign. Jinsu's legal team, led by a formidable Korean-American attorney named Catherine Yu, filed formal complaints with the Department of Transportation, the FAA, and several civil rights organizations. Simultaneously, his media team reached out to investigative journalists at major outlets. When the story broke on a Sunday evening designed for maximum visibility, it led every major newscast. Billionaire defends surgeon from airport discrimination. 4-year-old boy's intervention sparks national debate. Prestige Airways faces civil rights investigation. Maya found herself thrust into an unfamiliar spotlight. Interview requests flooded her inbox. News trucks appeared outside her apartment building. Her hospital's communications department scrambled to manage the sudden attention. She had prepared for this, but preparation couldn't fully capture the disorienting experience of becoming a public figure overnight. "Dr. Richardson, how did it feel to be accused of fraud?" "Dr. Richardson, do you believe this was racially motivated?" "Dr. Richardson, what do you want to see happen to Patricia Holloway?" She answered each question with the careful precision of her surgical training. She described the incident without embellishment. She referenced the data Jinsu's team had compiled. She named the systemic patterns while acknowledging that individuals were also responsible for their choices. But it was the moment when an interviewer asked about Jun that Maya's composure finally cracked. "He was so brave," she said, her voice catching. 4 years old, and he saw injustice and refused to be silent. He reminded everyone in that terminal that I was a person, a doctor, a healer, someone who had saved his life. He saw me when the adults couldn't. The clip went viral within hours. Social media exploded with the hashtag number Jun spoke, celebrating the little boy's courage. Parents shared stories of teaching their children to speak up against unfairness. Black professionals posted their own experiences of being questioned, doubted, made to prove their credentials. And in the midst of the attention, something else began to emerge: patterns. The first call came from a black businessman in Chicago. "I saw your interview," Marcus Wright said, his voice tight with emotion. "The same thing happened to me at O'Hare last year, Prestige Airways. Same accusations about my first-class ticket, same security response. I filed a complaint, but nothing happened." Maya connected him with Catherine Yu. The second call came from a black professor in Boston, then a lawyer in Houston, then a retired military officer in Phoenix. Within 2 weeks, Catherine had documented over 100 similar incidents, all involving Prestige Airways, all involving black passengers in premium cabins, all following the same disturbing pattern. "It's not random," Catherine reported during a strategy session at Jinsu's Seattle hotel suite. "It's procedural. Somewhere in their training materials or internal communications, there are directives about enhanced screening of certain passengers. We just need to find them." "Can we subpoena their training documents?" Maya asked. "Not yet. We need to file a lawsuit first, and for that, we need plaintiffs willing to go public." Catherine spread her files across the conference table. "I have 37 people ready to join a class action, but I want more. I want this to be undeniable." Jinsu, who had been quietly reviewing documents by the window, spoke without turning around. "What about internal sources, employees who disagree with these policies?" "I'm working on that. Airlines have strict confidentiality agreements, but there are always whistleblowers willing to risk it for the right cause." The whistleblower appeared 3 days later. Her name was Rebecca Chen, a former Prestige Airways gate supervisor who had resigned 6 months earlier after refusing to implement what she called the profile protocol. "They never put it in writing," Rebecca explained during her deposition. "It was all verbal instructions, supervisor to supervisor. When you see certain passengers in first class, you confirm their tickets. Certain passengers meaning anyone who doesn't look like they belong there." "And how were you taught to determine who belongs in first class?" Catherine asked. Rebecca's face crumpled with shame. "You know what they meant. Everyone knew. We just weren't supposed to say it out loud." The deposition recordings, when leaked to the media, caused an immediate firestorm. Prestige Airways' stock dropped 11% in a single day. The CEO resigned, followed by 3 board members. The transportation department announced a formal investigation. But for Maya, the larger fight was just beginning. The backlash came as expected, sharp and relentless. Right-wing commentators accused her of manufacturing outrage for fame. Anonymous social media accounts flooded her pages with racial slurs and threats. Someone published her home address online, forcing her to temporarily relocate. Worse, there were attacks on her professional credibility. Dr. Richardson's recent media appearances raised questions about her judgment. A rival surgeon wrote in an industry newsletter, "One wonders whether her focus on activism affects her commitment to patient care." The insinuation was clear. By speaking out, she had compromised herself. Maya felt the pressure building like water against a dam. The sleepless nights increased. Old memories surfaced: her mother's humiliation in that department store, the countless microaggressions of her career, the exhaustion of always having to prove she belonged. One evening, after a particularly brutal day of negative coverage, she sat alone in her temporary apartment, staring at the wall. Her phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Jinsu. She almost didn't answer. "You're struggling," he said without preamble when her face appeared on his screen. It wasn't a question. "Is it that obvious?" "I recognize the signs. I've been where you are." Maya almost laughed. "You've been subjected to racist attacks for speaking out against discrimination?" "I've been attacked for other things. When I first started my company, I was 32 years old, Korean, not from the right family, the right university, the right connections. Every success was attributed to luck or exploitation. Every failure was proof I didn't belong. Jin-Soo's expression was distant, remembering. They said I was too aggressive, too ambitious, too foreign in my thinking. I was told to be quieter, smaller, less threatening to the established order. What did you do? I built something they couldn't ignore. I proved them wrong with results, not words. He paused. But I also learned something important. You cannot do it alone. No one can. The myth of individual achievement is exactly that, a myth. Every success is built on support, connection, community. I feel very alone right now. You're not. You have your colleagues who believe in you. You have the passengers who have come forward to share their stories. You have my team, working around the clock on your behalf. Jin-Soo leaned closer to the camera. And you have Jun, who asks about you every day, who drew a picture of Doctor, heart-saving people, and hung it on his wall. Maya felt tears finally spill over. He's a remarkable child. He learned from you. Jin-Soo's voice softened. On the day of his surgery, when I was terrified, when I thought I might lose him, you came out of that operating room, and you took my hands, and you told me that my son had a warrior's heart, that he had fought for 16 hours and won, that he would have a full, beautiful life because he refused to give up. Maya remembered that moment, the exhaustion, the relief, the profound connection that forms between doctor and parent in moments of shared crisis. You gave my son a future, Jin-Soo continued. Now let us help you build one, not just for yourself, but for everyone who will come after you. The lawsuit, when it finally went to trial, became the most closely watched civil rights case in years. The courtroom in Atlanta was packed every day, media and observers filling every available seat. Maya sat at the plaintiff's table alongside the other class members, business executives, professors, doctors, lawyers, artists, a cross-section of accomplished Black Americans who had been subjected to the same degrading treatment. Jin-Soo attended whenever his schedule allowed, always with Jun beside him. The little boy's presence had become a powerful symbol, the child who spoke when adults were silent, whose simple recognition of a hero had sparked a movement. Catherine Yu built the case with methodical precision. She presented the statistical evidence of discriminatory patterns. She played Rebecca Chen's depositions. She called expert witnesses who explained how implicit bias training had been deliberately undermined within Prestige Airways' corporate culture. And then Maya took the stand. For 3 hours, she recounted her experience at the airport. She described the suspicion in Patricia Holloway's eyes, the public humiliation, the security response that treated her like a criminal. She explained, in clinical detail, the psychological impact of being assumed guilty based on appearance. But it was her closing statement that would be replayed on news programs for months afterward. I save lives, Maya said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. I have saved hundreds of children who would not be alive today without the surgeries I've performed. I have spent 2 decades building the skills and knowledge necessary to do this work, and none of that mattered at Gate 47. None of my credentials, my degrees, my years of training mattered. Because when Patricia Holloway looked at me, she didn't see a doctor. She saw a threat. The courtroom was utterly silent. I am not here today for myself. I am here for the mother I watched being humiliated when I was 12 years old. I am here for the passengers who filed complaints that went nowhere. I am here for the Black travelers who will walk through airport terminals tomorrow and next week and next year, hoping they won't be singled out, won't be questioned, won't be made to prove they belong. She turned to look directly at the jury, 12 faces of various backgrounds, all watching her with complete attention. We are asking you to send a message, not just to Prestige Airways, but to every institution that has embedded discrimination into its procedures. The message is simple. We see you. We have the evidence. And we will not stop until everyone who walks through your doors is treated with the dignity they deserve. When she finished, Jun's small voice echoed from the gallery. Go, Dr. Hart. A ripple of surprised laughter moved through the courtroom, breaking the tension. Even the judge allowed a small smile before calling for order. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Maya spent those 48 hours in a hotel room, alternating between restless pacing and forced attempts at calm. Jinsu's team brought updates when they could: legal analysts' predictions, media speculation, reports of protest crowds gathering outside the courthouse. When the call finally came that a verdict had been reached, Maya felt a strange peace settle over her. Whatever happened next, she had spoken her truth. She had fought. The courtroom was even more packed than before. Maya took her seat, aware of the cameras, aware of Jinsu and June in the second row, aware of the dozens of fellow plaintiffs who had trusted her to be their voice. The foreman rose to read the verdict. In the matter of Richardson et al. Versus Prestige Airways. Maya's heart pounded in her ears. On the count of systemic racial discrimination, we find the defendant guilty. A gasp swept through the courtroom. On the count of civil rights violations, we find the defendant guilty. Maya's eyes closed involuntarily, relief washing over her. On the count of deliberate infliction of emotional distress, we find the defendant guilty. The damages awarded were staggering: not just financial compensation for the plaintiffs, but mandated reforms, external oversight, and the establishment of a permanent civil rights compliance office within the airline. But for Maya, the most important moment came afterward. Jun broke free from his father's grasp and ran to her, throwing his arms around her legs with joyful abandon. "You won," he exclaimed, his face shining. "You won, Dr. Hart. I knew you would." Maya scooped him up, laughing and crying simultaneously. Around them, cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. But for a moment, the world narrowed to just this: a little boy's embrace, a father's grateful smile, and the knowledge that justice, however imperfect, had been served. The verdict sent shockwaves through corporate America. Within hours of the announcement, Prestige Airways' stock plummeted another 15%. Emergency board meetings were convened. Crisis management teams worked through the night crafting statements that attempted to express contrition without admitting systemic wrongdoing. But the damage extended far beyond one airline. Across the country, other travel companies scrambled to review their own policies, suddenly aware that the spotlight might swing in their direction next. Hotel chains quietly revised guest screening procedures. Rental car agencies updated their training materials. The entire hospitality industry watched the Prestige Airways collapse and understood that the rules had fundamentally changed. Maya Richardson, exhausted but unable to sleep, sat in her hotel room watching the coverage unfold across multiple news channels. Her phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, congratulatory messages, and inevitably hate mail from those who viewed the verdict as an attack on American business. She had become a symbol, whether she wanted to be or not. A knock at her door made her tense instinctively. The death threats had continued throughout the trial, and though Jinsu's security team monitored everything, the constant vigilance had worn on her. "It's me," Jinsu's voice came through the door. "And June. He insisted on seeing you before his bedtime." Maya opened the door to find the little boy in pajamas decorated with cartoon rockets, clutching Mr. Trunk to his chest. His father stood behind him, still in his courtroom suit but with his tie loosened and fatigue evident in his eyes. "Dr. Hart," June rushed forward, wrapping his arms around her legs. "Daddy said I could say goodnight because tomorrow we have to fly home." Maya crouched to his level, smoothing his curly hair with maternal affection. "You're going back to Seoul?" "For now," Jinsu answered, stepping inside. "My mother's health has been declining. She wants to see June while she still can." The weight of those words, "times, while she still can," times settled heavily in the room. "I'm sorry," Maya said quietly. "Is it serious?" "She's 91. She's had a good life, a full life. But time is." Jinsu's voice caught briefly before he controlled it. "Time is finite for all of us." Jun, seemingly unaware of the adult gravity in the conversation, tugged on Maya's hand. "Will you come visit us in Korea? Daddy has a really big house with a garden, and I have a puppy named Biscuit, and you could meet grandmother and—" "June," his father interrupted gently. "Dr. Richardson is very busy. She has many patients who need her." "But she's family," June protested, with the unassailable logic of childhood. "You said so, and family visits each other." Maya felt her heart constrict. She looked at Jinsu, whose expression revealed nothing, then back at the earnest little face before her. "I would love to visit someday," she told June. "When things settle down, when your grandmother is feeling better." June nodded solemnly, apparently satisfied with this promise. He hugged her once more, then allowed his father to scoop him up. "Say good night, June." "Good night, Dr. Hart. I love you." The words, delivered with a child's effortless sincerity, broke something open in Maya's chest. She had saved countless children's lives, but rarely did she maintain connection with them afterward. The nature of her work was intervention and release, fix the heart, send them home, move on to the next crisis. June was different. June had spoken for her when no one else would. June had seen her as a person when the world saw only a problem. "I love you too, sweetheart," she whispered, and meant it absolutely. After June was carried out by a security team member who would take him to their suite, Jin-soo lingered in the doorway. "There's something I need to tell you," he said, his voice lower now, more serious. "Something that may change how you see me." Maya gestured toward the chairs by the window. "Sounds like we should sit down." Jin-soo settled into the chair across from her, his usual composure fractured by something that looked almost like vulnerability. For a long moment, he simply gazed out the window at the Atlanta skyline, gathering his thoughts. "I told you that I understood what it felt like to be questioned, doubted, made to prove my worth," he began. "What I didn't tell you was why I understood so deeply." Maya waited, sensing that this confession had been building for some time. "My wife, June's mother, was black." The revelation landed with quiet impact. Maya's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing, allowing him to continue. "Her name was Destiny Williams. I met her at Stanford, where she was completing her MBA while I was doing a visiting fellowship in engineering. She was," Jin-soo's voice softened with memory, "she was the most brilliant person I had ever encountered. Quick-minded, fiercely compassionate, absolutely unwilling to accept limitations that others tried to impose on her." "What happened to her?" Jin-soo's jaw tightened. "She died when June was 18 months old. Complications from an emergency surgery, a ruptured appendix that wasn't caught in time because the emergency room staff dismissed her pain as drug-seeking behavior." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "She told them something was wrong," Jin-soo continued, his voice now edged with old anger. "She described her symptoms clearly, precisely. She was a Stanford MBA, articulate and intelligent, and they made her wait. They told her she was being dramatic. They gave her ibuprofen and sent her back to the waiting room." Maya closed her eyes. She had seen it before, the studies showing that black patients' pain was systematically undertreated, their complaints dismissed, their lives valued less by healthcare systems that were supposed to protect everyone equally. By the time they finally took her seriously, it was too late. The infection had spread. She went into surgery but never woke up. Jin-soo's hands had clenched into fists. "I was $23 billion too late to save her. All my money, all my resources, all my connections, none of it mattered, because the people who should have helped her had already decided she wasn't worth believing." "Jin-soo." Maya reached across the space between them, placing her hand over his. "I'm so sorry. June doesn't remember her. He was too young. But I make sure he knows who she was, what she believed in, how much she loved him." Jin-soo finally looked at Maya directly, his eyes bright with unshed tears. "When I saw what was happening to you at that airport, when I watched them treat you exactly the way they treated Destiny in that emergency room, something broke in me. That's why you got involved. That's why I couldn't not get involved. Every time someone is dismissed, doubted, humiliated because of how they look, I see Destiny in that waiting room. I see her trying to convince people she was worth saving." His voice cracked. "I see my son growing up without a mother because the system failed her." Maya understood now the intensity of his commitment, the resources he had poured into the case, the way he looked at June with both overwhelming love and permanent grief. "June has her eyes," she said softly. "I see it now." Jin-soo nodded, a sad smile crossing his face. "He has her spirit too. That determination, that refusal to stay silent when something is wrong. When he spoke up for you at the airport, it was pure destiny. She would have done exactly the same thing." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. "This fight isn't over," Jin-soo said finally. "The verdict is just the beginning. There will be appeals, counter-campaigns, attempts to discredit everything we've built. Are you prepared for that?" Maya thought of her mother, humiliated in that department store. She thought of Destiny Williams, dying in a waiting room because no one believed her pain was real. She thought of June, who would grow up navigating a world that might look at his mixed heritage and make assumptions about where he belonged. "I'm prepared," she said, "for all of it." The appeals came swiftly, as Jin-Soo had predicted. Prestige Airways' new legal team, bolstered by insurance company funding and corporate defense specialists, filed motion after motion challenging the verdict. They attacked the statistical evidence as flawed. They questioned the methodology of the expert witnesses. They attempted to have Rebecca Chen's testimony struck from the record. Each challenge was met by Catherine Yu's team with meticulous counter-arguments. The legal battle stretched across months, each deadline bringing new filings, new hearings, new opportunities for the opposition to delay and deflect. But something unexpected began happening in parallel with the legal proceedings. Other companies started settling. First, a major hotel chain agreed to a consent decree requiring external civil rights monitoring after 3 former employees came forward with accounts of discriminatory guest treatment. Then a rental car agency paid a substantial settlement to a group of black customers who had been charged higher rates and subjected to more invasive ID verification than white customers. The dam had broken. What Maya had started in a single airport terminal had become a national reckoning. Civil rights organizations that had struggled for years to gain traction suddenly found their phones ringing with corporate executives seeking preemptive guidance. Diversity consultants who had been dismissed as unnecessary expenses were now in such demand that they had to turn away clients. Maya found herself invited to speak at conferences, universities, and corporate retreats. She testified before congressional committees considering new civil rights legislation. She met with cabinet officials who wanted to understand how federal agencies could better enforce existing protections. Through it all, she continued performing surgery. That commitment was non-negotiable. No matter how many interviews she gave or speeches she delivered, her primary identity remained what it had always been: a healer. The operating room was her sanctuary, the one place where the noise of the outside world fell away, and only the immediate, essential work remained. She saved 17 children's lives in the 8 months following the verdict. Each one reminded her why she had become a doctor in the first place, not for recognition or advocacy, but for the privilege of giving families more time together. The threat, when it came, arrived without warning. Maya was leaving the hospital after a long shift when she noticed the car parked across the street. Dark sedan, tinted windows, engine running. Something about it triggered her instincts, the same instincts that had warned her about Patricia Holloway's gaze at the airport. She walked faster toward her own vehicle, keys already in hand. The sedan's door opened. Maya broke into a run. But before she could reach her car, a man stepped into her path. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit his muscular frame. His face was expressionless, professional. "Dr. Richardson, someone would like to speak with you." "Who?" Maya demanded, positioning herself to flee. "Someone who believes this situation has escalated beyond what's reasonable. Someone who wants to discuss resolution." "I'm not interested in private discussions. Tell your employer to contact my lawyers." The man didn't move. "My employer values discretion. This conversation happens now, or not at all. And you want it to happen, Dr. Richardson. Trust me on that." Before Maya could respond, another vehicle pulled up, a familiar black SUV with security personnel she recognized from Jin-Soo's team. The driver stepped out, hand moving toward his jacket. "Dr. Richardson, are you all right?" The tension crackled between the two groups. The man in the ill-fitting suit assessed the new arrivals with practiced calm, then smiled thinly. Another time, perhaps. He returned to the sedan, which pulled away smoothly, disappearing into traffic before Jin-Soo's security could pursue. "They're escalating," Catherine Yu said during the emergency video conference that evening. Her usually composed face showed signs of strain. "I've been receiving similar approaches, vague suggestions that settlement might be preferable to continued litigation. Nothing directly threatening, but the implication is clear." "Who are they?" Maya asked, still shaken from the parking lot encounter. "Prestige Airways has hired a new crisis management firm, Banner and Associates. They specialize in making problems go away." Catherine's mouth twisted with distaste. "Their methods are not always within legal boundaries." Jin-Soo's image on the screen was stone-faced. He was calling from Seoul, where his mother's health had taken a turn for the worse. June was visible in the background, playing quietly while his father conducted business. "I'm increasing security for everyone connected to the case," Jin-Soo said. "Maya, I want you to have round-the-clock protection until we understand what we're dealing with. I can't do my job with bodyguards following me into operating rooms. You can't do your job if something happens to you." The logic was inarguable, but Maya chafed against it nonetheless. The freedom she had fought to preserve was now being constrained by the very act of fighting. "There's something else," Catherine added, her voice dropping. "I've received information suggesting that Banner and Associates is investigating your background, Maya. Looking for anything they can use to discredit you. There's nothing to find. I've never hidden anything about my life. They're not looking for truth. They're looking for ammunition. Anything that can be twisted, taken out of context, made to seem damaging." Catherine hesitated. "They've been asking questions about your medical school years, your residency, any disciplinary incidents, or professional complaints." Maya felt cold settle in her stomach. There were none. "I know, but that doesn't mean they won't manufacture something. A disgruntled colleague, a patient family who wasn't satisfied with an outcome. All it takes is one person willing to make accusations, and suddenly the narrative shifts from civil rights victory to controversy." The meeting continued for another hour, strategy and contingency plans layering atop each other. When it finally ended, Maya sat alone in her apartment, staring at the walls that had become both sanctuary and prison. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Asterisk. "We can end this quietly. No more threats, no more publicity, just a private settlement, and everyone moves on. Think about it, Dr. Richardson. Think about your patients. Think about what happens if you can't practice medicine anymore. Asterisk." She stared at the message for a long time before deleting it without response. "I need to pause here and ask you something important. If this story is gripping you, if you're feeling the tension, wondering what Maya will do next, invested in whether justice will ultimately prevail, please take a moment to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. I know I've asked before, but here's why it matters. Every subscriber, every share, every comment telling me where you're watching from helps this message reach more people. Stories like Maya's aren't just entertainment. They're mirrors reflecting realities that millions of people live every single day. The more people who see these stories, the harder it becomes for injustice to hide in shadows. So if you believe that these stories deserve to be told, become part of our community. Comment below with where you're watching from. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Together, we're building something that matters. Now, let me tell you what happened next, because the situation was about to get much, much worse. The attack on Maya's reputation began 3 weeks later. It started with an anonymous blog post claiming that Dr. Maya Richardson had been involved in a malpractice cover-up during her residency. The post alleged that a patient had died due to her negligence, and that hospital administrators had buried the incident to protect her career. The allegations were false completely, demonstrably false. Maya had never been involved in any malpractice claim. Her residency records were spotless. But by the time the truth could be established, the story had spread across social media, picked up by outlets eager for controversy. Civil rights hero, or medical liability, questions surface about Dr. Richardson's past. The headlines were carefully crafted to imply guilt while maintaining technical deniability. Words like questions, allegations, and controversy allowed publication without definitive claims. Maya watched her carefully built reputation crumble in real time. Former colleagues who had supported her suddenly became difficult to reach. Interview requests dried up. The hospital's communications team began managing her public appearances more carefully, concerned about institutional liability. "They're destroying me," she told Catherine during another emergency call, "and I can't stop it. We're working on it. We've already identified the original blog post as originating from an IP address connected to Banner and Associates. We're building a defamation case. By the time we win that case, my career will be over." The truth of this statement hung between them, uncontested. That night, Maya received a call from Jinsu. His voice was rough with exhaustion. His mother had passed away 2 days earlier, and he had barely slept since. "I heard what's happening," he said. "I'm coming back to the States. You don't need to do that. You should be with your family. You are my family." The words came without hesitation. "You and June and the people who fight alongside us. That's what destiny taught me, that family isn't just blood. It's choice. It's commitment. Jinsu, they're trying to break you because they know you're winning. They know the appeals are failing. They know the settlement pressure isn't working. So they've moved to character assassination. His voice hardened. But they don't understand who they're dealing with. What do you mean? They think they can outspend us, outlast us, outstrategy us. But I built a $23 billion company from nothing. I've faced opponents who tried to destroy me in every way imaginable. And I'm still standing. A pause. We're still standing, Maya. And we're going to show them what that means. Jinsu's counteroffensive began within 48 hours. His investigators traced the defamatory blog post through layers of anonymization, ultimately connecting it directly to Banner and Associates. More importantly, they discovered that Banner had a pattern of similar campaigns using fabricated allegations to pressure litigants into settlements. Catherine Yu filed an immediate motion with the court, arguing that Prestige Airways was engaged in witness intimidation and obstruction of justice through their agents. She included evidence not just of the attack on Maya, but of Banner's history with other cases, a pattern that suggested criminal enterprise, rather than legitimate crisis management. Simultaneously, Jinsu's media team reached out to investigative journalists who had been following the case. Within a week, major outlets were running stories about the smear campaign, framing it as corporate retaliation against a civil rights hero. The narrative shifted again, but this time, in Maya's favor. Airlines' dirty tricks exposed. How Prestige Airways tried to destroy the doctor who beat them. Public sympathy, already substantial, transformed into outrage. The same social media platforms that had spread the defamatory allegations now filled with support for Maya. The hashtag number I stand with Dr. Richardson trended for 3 consecutive days. Even more significantly, new whistleblowers emerged from within Banner and Associates itself. Junior employees, disgusted by what they had been asked to participate in, provided internal documents detailing the scope of the intimidation campaign. The evidence was damning. Not just Maya, but dozens of other litigants had been targeted with similar tactics over the years. Banner's client list included major corporations across multiple industries, all willing to pay for plausible deniability while their opponents were systematically destroyed. The FBI opened an investigation. The final hearing in the Prestige Airways case took place on a gray November morning, 18 months after Maya's confrontation at Gate 47. The appellate court had rejected every challenge to the original verdict. The evidence of corporate intimidation had tainted any remaining legal strategy. Prestige Airways insurance carriers, facing the prospect of even larger judgments if the litigation continued, forced the company's new leadership to the negotiating table. The settlement, when announced, was unprecedented. Beyond the financial compensation for the class, members' substantial sums that would ensure economic security for families who had suffered genuine harm, the agreement required structural changes that would reshape the airline industry. External civil rights monitors with enforcement authority. Mandatory bias training developed by independent experts. Transparent reporting of discrimination complaints. Automatic escalation procedures when pattern evidence emerged. And perhaps most symbolically, the establishment of the Destiny Williams Foundation for Travel Equity, funded by a $100 million contribution from Prestige Airways dedicated to ensuring that no traveler would face discrimination based on race, ethnicity, or national origin. Jinsu had insisted on that provision. The foundation would be chaired by Maya herself, with a board drawn from civil rights leaders, travel industry experts, and community advocates. When Maya stepped to the microphone to address the press after the settlement announcement, Jun was by her side. Now 5 years old, he had grown since that morning at the airport, but his spirit remained unchanged, curious, compassionate, utterly unafraid to speak his mind. "Today is a victory," Maya began, her voice strong despite the emotion beneath it. "But it's not my victory. It's not the victory of the class members who fought beside me. It's the victory of everyone who has ever been made to feel unwelcome in spaces they had every right to occupy." She looked down at Jun, who smiled up at her with complete trust. 18 months ago, a 4-year-old boy saw something wrong and refused to stay silent. He didn't understand corporate policy, or legal strategy, or media cycles. He just knew that someone was being treated unfairly, and he spoke up. Maya's eyes found Jinsu in the crowd, standing slightly apart, his expression a mixture of pride and grief and hope. Jun's mother, Destiny Williams, didn't live to see this day. She was taken from her family because a system that should have protected her failed to see her humanity. This foundation carries her name because we refuse to let her story end in tragedy. Her legacy will be change, real, lasting, structural change that saves lives. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle over the assembled crowd. To everyone watching who has ever been questioned, doubted, made to prove you belong, I see you, we see you, and we will keep fighting until the question of your worth is never asked again. The years that followed brought transformation on multiple fronts. The Destiny Williams Foundation grew beyond its original scope, becoming a major force for civil rights advocacy across the travel and hospitality industries. Under Maya's leadership, it funded research, trained advocates, and brought legal challenges against discrimination wherever it emerged. Maya continued her surgical practice, though she reduced her caseload slightly to accommodate her expanded role. She mentored young surgeons of color, creating pathways for those who might otherwise face the same barriers she had encountered. Her reputation, far from being damaged by the defamation campaign, emerged stronger than before the doctor who healed hearts and fought for justice. Jinsu returned to Seoul to manage his mother's estate, but he traveled frequently to Seattle, where the foundation was headquartered. His relationship with Maya deepened slowly. Carefully, two people who understood loss too well to rush into anything that mattered this much. June thrived, growing into a thoughtful child who asked endless questions about fairness and kindness and why the world didn't always work the way it should. He remembered the airport incident only vaguely, but he knew the story by heart, how he had spoken up for his doctor, how his words had changed everything. "Do you think I'll always be brave?" he asked Maya one evening, during one of Jinsu's visits to Seattle. They were sitting in her apartment, watching the sunset paint the skyline gold and pink. "What makes you ask that?" June considered the question with the seriousness that characterized so much of his thinking. "Sometimes I feel scared about things, like when Daddy had to go away and I didn't know if he was coming back. Or when the bigger kids at school say mean things about how I look different." Maya pulled him closer, her heart aching for the challenges he would face navigating a world that didn't always know how to see people like him, Korean and black, belonging everywhere and nowhere at once. "Being brave doesn't mean not feeling scared," she told him. "Being brave means feeling scared and doing the right thing anyway. That's what you did at the airport. You were probably scared of those big adults, but you spoke up because you knew it was right." "I wasn't really scared then," June admitted. "I was just mad. They were being mean to you, and you're my friend." "Sometimes anger is what courage looks like." Maya smiled. "The important thing is that you acted. Most people see wrong things happening, and they freeze. They tell themselves it's not their business, or someone else will handle it, or it won't make a difference anyway. But you didn't do that. You saw something wrong, and you used your voice." June was quiet for a moment, processing this. "Dr. Hart?" "Yes, sweetheart. When I grow up, I want to help people like you do. Not with surgery, I don't like blood, but with words. I want to use my voice to help people who can't speak up for themselves." Maya felt tears prick at her eyes. She thought of Destiny Williams, the mother June had never known, whose spirit lived on in her son's compassion and courage. "I think your mother would be very proud of you," she whispered. "I know I am." 5 years after the settlement, Maya returned to Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport. It was not a casual visit. She was there for the unveiling of a permanent installation in Terminal B, a multimedia exhibit documenting the civil rights struggle in American travel, from the segregated terminals of the Jim Crow era to the contemporary challenges that had sparked her own case. The exhibit was the Destiny Williams Foundation's largest public project, designed to educate travelers about the history they walked through every day and to inspire continued vigilance against discrimination. Jinsu walked beside her as they approached Gate 47, the same gate where everything had begun. Jun, now 9 years old, held his father's hand, his curious eyes taking in the bustling terminal. The gate area had been redesigned. Where Patricia Holloway had once stood with her accusations and her radio, a sleek new podium bore a plaque commemorating the incident that had changed everything. Behind it, a digital display cycled through photographs and testimonies from the case. "It feels strange," Maya said quietly, "being back here." "Good strange or bad strange?" Jinsu asked. She considered the question. "Healing strange, like visiting a wound that's finally closed." A small crowd had gathered for the unveiling ceremony. Foundation supporters, civil rights leaders, airline executives who had learned hard lessons about the cost of discrimination. Maya spotted Catherine Yu, now a federal judge, speaking with a group of young attorneys she mentored through the Foundation's legal fellowship program. In the years since the case, Catherine had continued fighting, taking on discrimination cases across multiple industries and training the next generation of civil rights lawyers. Her appointment to the federal bench had been celebrated as a milestone, the first Korean-American woman to serve in her district. Maya also recognized Marcus Wright, the Chicago businessman whose call after her first interview had helped build the class action. His own company had grown substantially, and he now sat on the Foundation's board, channeling his success into advocacy. And there, near the back of the crowd, was Rebecca Chen, the whistleblower, whose courage had provided crucial evidence. Rebecca had faced her own struggles after coming forward, including retaliation from former colleagues and difficulty finding new employment. The Foundation had supported her through those challenges, and she now worked as a consultant, helping companies develop genuinely equitable policies rather than the performative gestures that had characterized so much corporate diversity work. "Are you ready?" Jinsu asked, as the ceremony's start time approached. Maya nodded, but before she moved toward the podium, June tugged on her sleeve. "Dr. Hart, can I say something at the microphone?" She looked at Jinsu, who shrugged with a smile that suggested this request was not entirely unexpected. "What do you want to say?" Maya asked. June straightened his shoulders. He had inherited his father's posture, that unconscious authority that filled space without demanding it. "I want to tell people why I spoke up. Because maybe other kids will hear it and know that they can speak up too." Maya felt her heart expand with pride and love and hope for the future this child represented. "I think that's exactly what people need to hear," she said. The ceremony began with formal remarks from airport officials and Foundation representatives. Maya spoke about the history of discrimination in American travel and the progress that had been made since the settlement. She acknowledged the ongoing challenges. The work was far from finished, while celebrating the genuine changes that had occurred. Then June took the stage. He approached the microphone with the deliberate care of a child determined not to seem childish. The crowd quieted, charmed by his presence but uncertain what to expect. "My name is June Park," he said, his voice clear and strong despite the slight tremor of nervousness. "When I was 4 years old, I saw some people being really mean to Dr. Richardson. She's the doctor who saved my life when I was a baby. But they didn't know that. They just saw a black lady and decided she didn't belong in first class." The simplicity of his words carried devastating power. "I didn't think about what would happen if I spoke up. I just knew it was wrong and I had to say something. My mommy," he paused, glancing at his father. "My mommy died when I was really little, but my daddy tells me about her all the time. She was black, and she was brilliant, and she was kind. And she died because people didn't believe her when she said something was wrong." The crowd had gone utterly still. "I don't remember my mommy, but I know she would have wanted me to speak up for Dr. Hart. She would have wanted me to use my voice to help people who can't help themselves." June's eyes swept the assembled faces. "So that's what I'm going to keep doing. Even when it's scary. Even when I'm the only one. Because someone has to be first. Someone has to be brave. And maybe when other people see someone being brave, they'll be brave too." He stepped back from the microphone, looking uncertainly toward Maya and his father. The applause began slowly, then swelled to overwhelming volume. People rose to their feet, some were openly weeping. Maya pulled June into a fierce hug, tears streaming down her own face. "Your mother is so proud of you," she whispered in his ear. "I can feel it." Jinsu joined them, wrapping his arms around both Maya and his son. For a moment, the three of them stood together in a circle of embrace, while the world watched and wept and hoped. After the ceremony, as the crowd dispersed and the exhibit opened to the public, Maya found herself standing alone before the memorial plaque at Gate 47. The inscription read, **, on this spot, a 4-year-old boy reminded us that justice begins with the courage to speak. The Destiny Williams Foundation stands as testimony to the power of one voice to change everything. **. It's smaller than I remembered, a voice said behind her. Maya turned to find an older woman studying the gate area with an expression of complex emotion. There was something familiar about her face, the shape of her jaw, the set of her shoulders. I'm sorry, Maya said. Do I know you? The woman shook her head slowly. No, but I know you. Everyone knows you now. She paused, seeming to wrestle with something internal. My name is Helen Holloway. Patricia was my sister. The name hit Maya like a physical blow. She took an involuntary step backward. I'm not here to cause trouble, Helen said quickly, raising her hands in a gesture of peace. I came to apologize for what Patricia did to you, for who she was. Maya said nothing, waiting. She died 6 months ago. Cancer. Fast and merciless. Helen's voice was flat, controlled. In her last weeks, when she couldn't pretend anymore, she told me things. About her job. About the people she'd targeted over the years. About you. What did she say? She said she knew she was wrong from the moment she opened her mouth. But she couldn't back down. Couldn't admit a mistake in front of everyone watching. So she doubled down, and doubled down again, until there was no way out except through. Helen's eyes glistened. She said you looked at her with such dignity, such refusal to break, and it made her feel small. It made her feel like the criminal. Maya absorbed these words, trying to reconcile them with her memories of Patricia's sneering accusations. She said that if she could do it over, she would have said welcome aboard and let you pass without question. She would have treated you like she treated everyone else. Helen wiped her eyes. But she couldn't do it over. None of us can. All we can do is try to do better going forward. Why are you telling me this? Helen was quiet for a long moment. Because I raised my granddaughter to do the same things Patricia did, to be suspicious of people who looked different, to assume the worst, to protect our own against them. She shook her head slowly. And now I watch her teaching those same things to her children, and I see where it leads. I see Patricia dying with all that hate and regret inside her. I see you standing here, surrounded by people who love you, having changed the world. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. I came to tell you that Patricia was wrong. I came to tell you that some of us who thought like her are watching and learning and trying to be different. I came to tell you that what you did, it mattered. Not just for the people who already agreed with you, but for some of the people who didn't. Maya felt something shift inside her, not forgiveness exactly, but something adjacent to it. Understanding, perhaps. The recognition that human beings were capable of both terrible cruelty and genuine growth. Thank you for telling me, she said finally. I know that couldn't have been easy. Helen nodded, seeming relieved. I'll let you get back to your celebration. I needed you to know. She turned to leave, then paused. That little boy, Helen said, glancing toward where June was charming a group of admirers. He reminds me of my own son at that age, before I taught him to be afraid, before the world hardened him. A sad smile crossed her face. Maybe it's not too late for my great-grandchildren. Maybe they can learn from him instead of from me. She walked away, disappearing into the terminal crowds. Maya watched her go, then turned back to the plaque on the wall. She read the words again, feeling their weight anew. Asterisk. Justice begins with the courage to speak. Asterisk. It had begun with Jun's small voice. It had grown through testimonies and trials and setbacks and victories. It had touched lives she would never know about, changed minds she would never meet, planted seeds that would bloom for generations. And it would continue imperfect, incomplete, but endlessly pursuing the simple goal that had driven everything. A world where every person was treated with the dignity they deserved. That evening, Maya, Jinsu, and Jun had dinner at a restaurant overlooking the airport. Through the windows, they could see planes taking off and landing, carrying thousands of travelers to destinations around the world. 5 years, Jinsu said, swirling wine in his glass. It feels like yesterday and forever ago at the same time. So much has changed, Maya agreed, and so much hasn't. The work continues. Will it ever be finished? Jun asked, looking up from the tablet where he was drawing pictures of airplanes. The adults exchanged glances. Probably not in our lifetimes, Jinsu admitted. Maybe not for many lifetimes. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. It's like being a doctor. Maya added, you can't cure every patient. You can't save every life. But you do what you can, for who you can, while you can, and you hope that others will continue after you. Jun considered this with his characteristic seriousness. That's kind of sad. Working really hard and never seeing it finished. Maybe, Maya said, but it's also kind of beautiful, because it means you're part of something bigger than yourself. Something that started before you were born and will continue after you're gone. You get to carry the torch for a while, make your contribution, and pass it to the next generation. She reached across the table and squeezed Jun's hand. You've already made your contribution. At 4 years old, you changed the world. Everything that happened, the trial, the settlement, the foundation, the exhibit downstairs, it all started because you saw something wrong and used your voice. Jun's eyes widened with the dawning comprehension of his own impact. I did that? You did that? A slow smile spread across his face. Then I guess I better keep doing it. For Mommy. For all the people who need someone to speak up for them. Jinsu's hand found Maya's across the table. Their eyes met, and in that look was everything unspoken between them. Grief and hope, love and loss. The family they had become despite circumstances that should have kept them strangers. For all of them, Maya agreed, and for each other. Outside the restaurant windows, another plane lifted into the darkening sky, carrying passengers toward their destinations. Some would face discrimination along the way. Some would experience the casual cruelty of systems designed for others. But more and more of them would find their paths smoothed by the changes Maya and her allies had fought for, the training programs, the oversight mechanisms, the cultural shifts that made old prejudices harder to express and easier to challenge. The sun set over Atlanta, painting the clouds in brilliant oranges and purples. Maya watched the colors fade, thinking of her mother shopping for that wedding dress, thinking of Destiny Williams in the emergency room, thinking of all the people whose stories would never be told because no one had been there to speak for them, but also thinking of June, who would carry this torch forward. Of the young lawyers Catherine was training, of the companies genuinely changing their practices, of Helen Holloway's great-grandchildren, who might grow up with different lessons than their ancestors. Change was possible, slow, imperfect, demanding constant vigilance, but possible. And that possibility was worth everything. 1 year later, Maya stood at a different airport, Incheon International in Seoul, waiting for Jinsu and Jun to emerge from the arrivals gate. So much had changed in the past 12 months. The foundation had expanded internationally, opening offices in London, Tokyo, and Sao Paulo. Maya had been awarded a MacArthur Fellowship for her work combining surgical excellence with social advocacy. And Jinsu had asked her a question one evening over video chat that had changed everything between them. She had said yes. Now she was in Seoul for their wedding, a small ceremony at the Park family estate, witnessed by close friends and the few family members who remained. Jun would walk her down the aisle, a role he had accepted with tremendous gravity and only slightly concealed excitement. The arrivals gate opened, and there they were, Jinsu, tall and composed, his eyes lighting up the moment he saw her. And Jun, racing ahead with his characteristic abandon, shouting "Dr. Hart" across the crowded terminal. Maya caught him as he leaped into her arms, spinning him around while Jinsu approached at a more dignified pace. "Welcome to Korea," Jun said breathlessly. "I get to show you everything. My school and my room and biscuit and grandmother's garden and—" Jun, his father's voice was gentle. "Let Maya breathe. She just had a very long flight." "It's fine," Maya laughed, setting Jun down but keeping hold of his hand. "I want to see everything." Jinsu reached her and pulled her into an embrace that felt like home. "I missed you," he murmured into her hair. "I missed you too." "Only 3 more days until you're stuck with us forever," Jun announced cheerfully. "Daddy says that's what marriage means. No takebacks." Maya laughed again, the sound free and joyful in a way she wouldn't have believed possible 5 years ago. "No takebacks," she agreed, looking at Jinsu with everything she felt visible in her eyes. "I wouldn't want any." They walked out of the terminal together, a family bound not by blood but by choice, by courage, by the simple act of speaking up when silence would have been easier. Behind them, travelers streamed through the airport, every color, every background, every story. Some would face challenges on their journeys, some would encounter prejudice and doubt, but the world was changing, one voice at a time, one act of courage at a time, one refusal to accept injustice at a time. And for Maya Richardson, Dr. Hart, healer of children's bodies, champion of human dignity, the journey was just beginning. What would you do if you witnessed someone being treated unfairly? Would you have the courage to speak up, like June did, even when you were small and scared? Would you use your voice to defend someone who needed defending? The truth is, we all have that choice every single day. We see small injustices and large ones. We witness moments when someone needs an advocate. And in those moments, we decide who we're going to be, silent bystanders or brave voices. If this story moved you, if it made you think about the power of speaking up, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Like this video. Leave a comment telling me what you would do. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel so you never miss another story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Because justice doesn't happen on its own. It happens when people like you, people who watch these stories and feel something stir inside them, decide to be part of the change. Thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. And thank you for being part of this community that believes stories have the power to change the world.